Hi, I'm Anatole, and this is my review of the Twilight Zone Season 1, episode number 15, titled I Shot an Arrow into the Air. And it scored 7.8 on imdb.com, and that is from 2,830 votes. And before I get into my thoughts on the episode, I do want to say that I had problems with the episode, but they were fruitful problems, if that makes sense, because I've found that the flaws in the episode related a lot to how the episode was made, and so there will be a lot for me to unpack. So, although I did not enjoy watching the episode, I think I'm going to get a lot out of talking about the episode, for what that's worth. Let's see, so here's the plot summary of the episode, courtesy of Wikipedia. A manned space flight with 8 crew members crash lands on what the astronauts believe to be an unknown asteroid, with an area of desert and jagged mountains. And it is commented upon again and again, you can't have an asteroid with atmosphere and gravity and air. If you have all those things, you're on a planet. So these astronauts should have realized immediately they were not on an asteroid, they were on a planet. That's the fault of Rod Serling writing this in 1960-ish, before we had ever been to the moon. And Rod Serling, I think probably along with the general public, still only knowing the broad circumstances, the broad outline of the space program. A lot of that, I think, didn't come out, the fine details didn't come out till later. And so I think him not knowing about not having an atmosphere on an asteroid, I think he should have known that, I think. But I'm willing to cut slack on that, just given the time period. Many people not being aware of all those details because we hadn't really spent a lot of time in space. At that point, 1960, Sputnik had revolved around the Earth. But I don't know if Yuri Gagarin, I don't know if there had been manned spaceflight. I can look that up. So just assume that I've looked it up offline. You don't need to put the answer in the comments down below. You know what? I'll look it up right now. Hold on. Yuri Gagarin had a manned spaceflight in April of 1961. So let's give a pass to Rod Serling on that. Only 4 of the crew survived the crash. The commanding officer Donlin, crewmen Corey and Pearson, and a crewman named Hudick, who is badly injured and barely alive, and the chances of rescue are bleak. After they bury the dead men, Donlin and Pearson concern themselves with taking care of Hudick, but Corey, who is only concerned with saving himself, declares that sharing their limited supply of water with Hudick will reduce their chances of survival for the rest of the team. And an 8-man crew, well, that's quite large. I wonder what their objective was. I don't know if they really state if it was just to go to another. It must have been to go to another planet, because if they feel they're on another planet, then that means that they had the capacity, the fuel and the air to crash land on another planet. So there must have been an extraplanetary mission. I'm really fumbling over my scientific words in this review. This sets Corey at odds with both Pearson and Donlin, who insist that they will care for Hudick and share their water with him as long as he does survive. Hudick dies a short time later. After they bury him, Donlin has Corey and Pearson trek out into the barren desert to see if there's anything that might improve their chances of survival. And I think it was quite a mistake letting them go unaccompanied, because at that point Corey had already shown he was going to resort to violence. So I think any mission should have contained all 3 men if you're going to have Corey come along at all, because you need someone to watch Corey and make sure he doesn't try to take advantage of someone when their guard is down, as he tries to later in the episode anyway. 6 hours later, Corey returns alone, claiming not to know where Pearson went. Donlan calls Corey out for having more water in his canteen now than when he had left, and demands to know where Pearson is. That's a great moment of the episode, where you see the colonel, deduce that Corey has taken Pearson's water, and the slow way and manner he does it, he's just waiting to trip Corey up in his own lie. Quite a nice scene. I like that scene a lot. Not believing his account, Donlan wants to see for himself and forces Corey at gunpoint to lead him to Pearson's body. When they reach the spot Corey claims to have found Pearson in, the body is not there, nor is there any evidence that backs Corey's claim, leaving Donlan more dubious. They later find Pearson near the edge of a mountain, alive but severely wounded. Donlan drops the gun and rushes to Pearson, who wordlessly gestures that he climbed the mountain and saw something. With his last bit of strength, Pearson draws a primitive diagram in the sand with his finger, two parallel lines intersected by a perpendicular line, and then dies. Meanwhile, Corey grabs the dropped gun and confesses that he attacked Pearson earlier. He then shoots and kills Donlan and sets out alone, confident that he will survive longer now that he has all the water for himself. So that's a moment in the episode that completely fails for me. Conley has shown twice already that he will physically attack the colonel given the chance. So why does the colonel set down his only means of protection from Corey on the ground and then leave it unattended for a few minutes and not believe that Conley won't grab it and then use it for himself? It just belies all rationale. And the colonel, in contrast to Corey, is shown as being a very, very cognate and coherent person. The way that he deduces that Corey has taken Pearson's water shows that he's being very rational and not irrational, not like Corey is. Corey climbs a mountain and sees a sign for Reno, along with telephone poles, which was what Pearson had attempted to draw before he died. Realizing they had in fact never left the earth, and that he had killed his partners for nothing, Corey breaks down weeping and begging his deceased crewmates for forgiveness. Now for some of my thoughts on the episode. The one thing I did differently for this episode in preparation was I discovered there was a radio serial drama in the late 80s and early 90s that rebroadcast the Twilight Zone episodes for radio, recasting them and rewriting them. And so I decided I would download it from Audible and listen to it. And it was quite useful because I saw in trying to adapt the episode for radio that the person who wrote new scenes, new sequences, felt that the opening sequence in the command center, which is a bunch of info dump, was not going to work for radio. So they wrote that scene out and instead included a much longer scene of the men inside the rocket before it blasts off, including dialogue for I think every one of the 8 members. And so that does two things. It gets rid of the info dump, and instead puts us in the rocket, and we get to be with the rocket when the crash happens, and so that crash is no longer a mystery to us. We are with the crewmen as they see the foreign object that hits the rocket ship. And then 2, the second thing that does that the TV show doesn't do is it develops the characters just an inch more, so that when we have the scene of the 4 surviving members and 4 dead members, the weight of those 4 being dead has a little more gravity because we've spent time with all 8 of the crew members, and so that scene means more. In the TV show, it means nothing. Those are statistics, the 4 dead crewmen, because we never got to meet them before they died. They died off screen. I mentioned that it can't be an asteroid. Right now I'm just reading from my notes. So number 2, it can't be an asteroid because asteroid wouldn't have atmosphere and air. 3, the star that they look at the sky They even talk about how that star has the same position and trajectory as the sun. Well, what else can it be but the sun? You're on a planet, it has atmosphere and air. You're looking at a star, it has the same trajectory and position as the sun. You didn't go outside the universe, the solar system. That is the sun, so you are back on Earth. Should have been quite clear you were back on Earth. Once Corey grabs the journal out of the hands of the Colonel, he is showing that he will use force. That is assault, grabbing something from a person like that forcefully. And so he has shown himself to be a physical danger. He needs to be treated as a physical threat. The Colonel fails to do so, and during one fight between Pearson and Corey, the Colonel takes Corey's side. So that's mistake number 2. How Corey loses his mind is not really developed. It's left ambiguous to the end. Is he in self-preservation mode, or is he going crazy? At the end, because he does go crazy when he sees that he's back on Earth, that resolves that conflict. I think it should never have been ambiguous, and that he's going crazy should have been leaned into harder and developed more. At this point, it just seems that he's concerned about protecting himself at the expense of others, and that gets symbolized in the lack of resources, and he's always going on about the water running out. Why do I say that it's not completely tacked on, that we do see he's going a little bit nuts? Other characters say he's being a bit deranged. The Colonel says that. And even though he's so concerned about water, when he drinks it, he's spilling it. He's all haphazard about this resource that he's so concerned about. But when others are drinking the water, you see how careful they are to not spill any of it. And I think the reason is that we see the Colonel is very rational. He's the last vestige of civilization, and Corey is going all crazy, and so he is everything but rational at that point in time. The actor playing the Colonel is nuanced enough that he can use the pitch in his voice to convey different emotions. You see him getting loud and being soft. Most succinctly, the strongest way, the example of that is when you say, "This is home now, gentlemen." You see the pitch go up and down, and so you can see how he's being stressed. He's being forceful at one point and then trying to be inclusive by lowering his voice so he's less threatening. But Corey, on the other hand, that actor, he's all very one note. The writing doesn't help him. The actor playing Corey in the radio drama, it's the same thing. So I think that's more a fault of the writing than it is of the acting, that Corey's so one note. Pearson is quite dull, the actor playing that. You'll be happy to hear, Corey, he won't be drinking any more water. That delivery in the program is very flat. Yeah, with the Colonel leaving the gun, it's just quite bad, because the Colonel is crossing the T's and dotting the I's, being very rational about everything. And then at the very end, he loses himself and forgets that he's left the gun there. And the only reason he's doing that is that he's got the hold of the stupid ball now. Corey had it up to then, and now he's got it. And so because he has the stupid ball, he has to do the stupid thing to make the plot move forward and has to leave the gun down. The ending is similar to Planet of the Apes. So similar, in fact, that was the first thing I was thinking, that this must be the planet Earth, and they're back in time, just like Planet of the Apes. I never once imagined they were anywhere else but Earth. I was just trying to piece together how or when, and so I think the question I should have had was not how or when, because it was the Earth, the current time, but where are they? And that's really the surprise, it's that they were outside of Reno. So I think for contemporary viewers, that twist ending is fails. We've seen enough. None of the reviewers I watched were surprised. They all guessed that was Earth. The clues are there, the stars similar to the sun. There's just enough there that you can't fool anyone. And so without that, what are we left with? We don't have good acting. The writing is not particularly good. And so in the end, I think the episode fails. But as I've pointed out before, the conditions under which Serling was writing, contractually he was obliged to provide 75% of the scripts himself. And you have the grind of doing the 30 episode season. And he's rarely doing more than one draft per script. you're going to get a lot of dross in the midst of getting the wheat in the chaff, dross in the gold. Well, you get what I'm going at. And this is one of the weaker episodes, consequently. So that's it. I'm interested. What are your thoughts on this episode? Did you enjoy it more than me? Or did you also agree with me and that the flaws of the episode are too bad, too severe to appreciate, to like the episode? Okay, so until next time, take care and be well. Goodbye.